So Richard and Laura, we'll just wait for about 30 seconds or so while the attendees are joining us, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And this webinar is being recorded, so we'll send it out to everybody who's registered at a later date. And Richard, if you'd like to start now.
Yes, okay. So just a brief introduction. I'm Dr. Richard McGee. I'm the Academic Director of the MSc in Financial Data Science. This is a brand new MSc we have in the Smurfit School, and this is the first year of this new MSc. So a little bit of background as to why we introduced this new MSc. Technology has really been transforming the banking, finance, and insurance sectors. So there's been a fintech revolution, and it's creating many new employment roles. And that's been driving demand for dedicated fintech and data science masters internationally. So some of the key trends behind these changes and what's driving them. We're seeing a lot of features in financial markets like account consolidation, improved user interfaces, and financial planning. So a lot of people are probably have apps on their phone now, like Revolut. There's 1.7 million users in Ireland. And a lot of banking transactions and payment technology has gone online. There's increased connectivity, enabling economies of scale and crowdfunding now. So companies that traditionally would have gone to investment banks to issue shares are now going directly to people via crowdfunding apps to get started, and it speeds up the process. And all of this connectivity and technology is leading to a lot more data and a lot more data-driven decisions. And a lot of those involve leveraging machine learning approaches to help make these decisions. Some examples of alternative data sources, or issues around that, is nowcasting. So before, where we were trying to forecast into the future, now even just keeping track of what's going on in the moment, there's so much data, is a massive task. People are looking at digital footprint data, so what everybody is doing online, network analysis, classifying individuals through their connections, through who they're interacting with online or even on their phones. And then transaction technology is also changing. So there's blockchain, smart contracts, and cryptocurrencies. So just a little bit about this alt data. So this is a term that came in maybe in 2014, or it's quite recent. And this is the idea that people are using all of this data now to make decisions. So an example of that would be there's payment companies that facilitate credit card transactions, and they're storing all of that data and selling it to hedge funds. And they're charging millions per annum for this data. So what would you use that data for? For example, if you wanted to know how much money McDonald's was making in a given month to kind of forecast their earnings, these credit card companies would see all of the transactions that were going into McDonald's, for example. And people are paying huge amounts of money for that data. And 3 out of 4 financial institutions now house alt data teams. So they're hiring people specifically to store data, analyze data, decide what data they're going to use, and what data will give them interesting insights in their business. And 90% of firms are expanding their alt data strategies. So even though it only started maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there's huge growth and demand in this area for people with relevant skills. The other thing I mentioned there was blockchain and this concept of a distributed ledger. And this is where people can interact directly with each other without a middleman and without a broker. So traditionally in financial transactions, you would often have a broker and they would charge quite a lot of money. For example, your bank, if you're transferring money to a foreign account or whatever. And it's quite hard to justify charging a percentage in that case. You know, the transactions are digital transactions and possibly are quite low cost. Whereas people can avoid that whole middle intermediary now by using distributed ledger technology. And a lot of people are keeping an eye on that and how it's going to impact on their business in the future. So just a little bit about our department in banking and finance in Smurfit, or our subject area. So even in advance of starting this master's, a lot of our academic staff are doing research on these topics already. And it's very much data-driven research in our subject area across a lot of different topics: investment, portfolio management, risk management, asset pricing, credit ratings, how you decide whether somebody's a good bet to lend money to or not, default risk, operational risk, sustainable investment, energy economics, banking regulation. These are all topics that are very heavy in data and data analytic decisions. So we have across our subject area, there's people who are doing actively researching, publishing research, and even interacting with industry in these areas. So some of the skills that we have already in-house, data collection and cleaning and database development. To do the type of research we do, your data really has to be good before you can trust the analysis. So that's something that we're all really hands-on in the department. Machine learning, network analysis, textual analysis. Textual analysis is where you're scanning old newspapers, for example, getting them into computer readable format and extracting information from them. Or more easily in this day and age, you have a lot of news online, Twitter feeds, all of that kind of thing, where you're trying to measure sentiment via text. And the things that matter there are, what are the important words around this topic, and trying to search for those, decide which words are key to the topic that you're looking at, and grouping them, and then classifying news events. And also econometrics, forecasting and predicting time series of financial prices. So those are all skills and tools that exist in the faculty. So some of the research examples I mentioned. We've people doing blockchain and cryptocurrency research, including myself, looking at pricing, transactional analysis, looking at high frequency Bitcoin futures, for example, network analysis across the blockchain, who's interacting with who, the behavior of people on the blockchain. Are they betting a lot, for example, is one example of research. A lot of researchers in our group use textual analysis across all of the different research topics now, often using social media as an information source, but also things like regulator reports or company filings. There's a number of people in the group who are using machine learning and data science for asset management. So predicting risk, predicting returns, data science for event prediction, and then artificial intelligence for anti-money laundering and greenwashing. So there's a number of people working in that area as well. So we have a lot of expertise in-house in Smurfit in this area. So in terms of this financial data science course, who is the course for? The idea is that you could either be coming from an engineering, computer science, or a technical background and looking to do a business master's and leverage your technical skills there. Or you could be coming from a business background and looking to develop your technical skills, your programming skills, your data science skills. And it's important that at the end of the day that you have an interest for talenting and an interest in applying data science to problems, because you're going to be doing a lot of that on the course. So just to go over the curriculum then, the first semester is a common semester across the MSCs in finance. You do quantitative methods for finance, capital markets, derivative securities, financial analysis, financial econometrics, and financial theory. And then in the spring semester is the more dedicated semester toward the financial data science speciality. And it starts off with a programming for financial data science module, which is 2 weeks long. And that's to make sure everybody has basic programming skills in Python that are going to be required to do financial data science projects. There's a machine learning for finance module. And the goal of that is to give all of the background theory behind different machine learning techniques and to give you examples and also projects where you can apply it yourself. And then there's a financial data science module, which I'm currently teaching. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And then in the summer semester, you have some optional modules that you can take as one path. A second path is an industry internship that you can take, or a third path is this Fintech Incubator project. And the idea there is that you receive a set of lectures on current fintech startups and identify a gap in the market and go through the process of developing an app or a product yourself. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit again as well. So in terms of the financial data science module, it's project-based. So there's one major project, and the idea is that you demonstrate your skills across the topic of financial data science. So in collecting data or scraping together an alternative data set, your database skills, your ability to plot and use good graphics, interpreting the data, applying machine learning to the data, and ultimately you're answering some research question and you're asked to give some economic interpretation of your results. For example, you improved investment performance by 1%. You know, for a fund of a certain size, that gives you a certain profits per annum. So the idea is that you're very much looking at the business case for the work that you do. So some example project teams from industry sponsors at the moment this year, one is modeling ESG scores. So people are more and more interested in ESG investing now and being socially responsible, worrying about the environment, and encouraging good governance of firms. And there's a range of different companies that rate companies along different parameters to give them an ESG score. Right? So the idea is you have these scores available, and you have to go and find out what is driving them from publicly available information, from company filings. And that again involves web scraping, textual analysis, and trying to model and predict changes in these scores, for example. Estimating cryptocurrency emissions is another topic. That's a big thing with cryptocurrencies, especially cryptocurrencies that involve mining. They're using up whole power plants now. And a lot of people are questioning if that's a good use of resources. There's another project which is modeling regulatory events in healthcare and biotech. So it's looking at FDA submissions about companies. And another one is identifying trending investment topics from social media. So what are people investing in? And I guess at the moment we see a lot of retail investors who are grouping together, you know, and backing certain stocks. So all of these are just to give a flavor of the different data science projects that you can do. And ultimately, people have to present their projects and present them to the companies in the case that it's a company project, and to the rest of the class as well. So the Fintech Incubator, then I mentioned, the idea there is that students receive lectures on the state of play in the exciting fintech startup sector. So what's happening now? Which companies are just starting to come out, and what areas are they in? What's the demand for technology and finance, and what's growing? And the idea is that they identify demand for a new fintech related app or another service or product themselves. And then they can work individually or in teams to develop the product idea, to conduct market research and construct a fundable business plan. So ultimately the goal there is that you build a business case, and quite a comprehensive one, taking into account everything you've learned about that process of starting a startup. And then within UCD, we've Nova UCD, and they come and give talks to the students. And the goal at the end of it is that the final project submission should be in the format of a submission to Nova UCD for startup support. Now, whether the end product is deemed, you know, to be good enough for an actual submission or not, that's the target. But not all of these projects are going to actually be submitted, obviously. But you know, our goal is to get a startup coming out of this new UMSC. So just in terms of employment roles then, globally, the number of jobs in data science are trending upward exponentially. I think everybody, you know, a lot of people are aware of that, and there's huge demand in the job market for people with data science skills. And that's true in finance and banking and insurance as well. So there's also a lot of venture capital So fintech startups are a hot area in venture capital now. A lot of investment is going into them and has been since 2010. And if you look at the banking environment in Ireland, in a recent Bearing Point Digital Leaders in Ireland study, the two top scoring companies in the whole of the country were banks in terms of being digital leaders. So you can see the demand again coming from the finance sector. So traditionally, companies that were traditionally finance companies are becoming tech companies now, in essence. So what kind of roles could you get coming out of this? So there's just some example roles on this slide. And again, if you Google financial data science, finance data scientist, you'll see the amount of roles that are live in this area. Data scientists for investment banks. There's a lot of jobs in new fintech companies. And even in regulation, there's a lot of data science. So there's data scientists in the Central Bank of Ireland, for example, and there's roles there. Okay, so that covers my what I wanted to cover in the presentation. There's some further information there, and just thank you for listening. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Richard. So if anybody has any questions, you can post them into the Q&A, and we're going to answer them live now. And so I just want to introduce myself. My name is Laura. I'm an admissions manager at the school. So just before we go to the Q&A, if you are thinking of applying for this program, the applications are now open. So when you're applying, you just go directly to the Smurfit School website, and you apply directly through the financial data science course. An application, you do need to set up a UCD account, and we will need to see your academic transcripts to date, an up-to-date CV, and then you also just have to answer 2 essay questions. So the essay questions are really about your motivation for the program, why you're applying for this program, and then again, as we mentioned throughout the webinar, the kind of career or jobs that you'd like to work at after you partake in the program as well. And at Smurfit, this is our first year of this program, and at Smurfit we do have a careers team who guide our students in terms of career opportunities and CV and interview preparation as well. So we do have a careers team that work with our MSc students at the school as well, and we do understand how important careers and opportunities after the masters are to our students. And we mentioned some of the jobs that students might partake in after the masters. If you are interested as well in talking to a current student, so on our website we have Ask a Student, and we have students from the course this year from Financial Data Science. So if you want to ask them a question directly about the program, you can do that on our website as well. And as Richard mentioned, if you do have any questions about the program or the application, you can contact our admissions team directly. So our email is smurfit.admissions@ucd.ie. So we're going to answer some of the questions that you have asked already. So if you do have any questions, just in the Q&A, you can post them there. And what we'll do is I'll call them out and we'll go through each one. So Richard, I might ask you just the first one. It's in terms of careers. So could you start your career in investment banking after partaking in this program?
Yes. So, Smurfit has a history across all of the MSCs, the MSc Finance, the MSc Quant Finance, of graduates going into investment banking, often in London. So I did the MSc Quant Finance myself, and a number of my classmates would have gone on in that career direction. So again, the MSc FDS, you have a common first half of the year with the other MSCs in Smurfit, and then what you're getting is specific data science skills as well, and analytical skills, and I think those are valued across every business now in space, in the way things are moving. Okay, so there's a demand for people with data science skills in anyone who's making a decision basically at any point in a business. So investment banks are advertising financial data scientists. So if you look for that, I've seen them. I don't know if right today there's live job adverts for it, but if you if you keep an eye on advertised jobs, they're often advertising looking for data scientists who have knowledge of the finance sector.
Thank you. And as well, we do have a careers team at Smurfit that work with our MSc students as well. And you can book in like one-to-one meetings with the career advisor too. So there is a focus when you study at Smurfit in terms of careers and jobs after your program as well. Richard, I might ask you as well, we get this question quite a lot for our finance programs. If you haven't studied a business degree and you've no business modules in your undergrad, is this a disadvantage in studying the master program?
I myself, I did engineering, electronic engineering as an undergrad, and I did the MSc in quant finance in Smurfit quite a while ago. So I came from that background where I didn't have any business background or any economics, and I mean, you obviously have to engage in the material, and some people who have already covered some of the material are going to have an advantage. But you know, you can obviously overcome that. I think it's very doable from people, even though I might be biased, people from a technical background tend to be quite hard, you know, quite hard working, you know, willing to work on tough problems, and so I think it isn't a block at all. And you know, I'm not alone. A lot of people have come from technical background and gone through these masters. But obviously, if you do any subject that you've never done before, relative to someone who has done it before, you know, you're not starting off with the same knowledge that they have, but you can still do better than they do in an exam, for example. You know, so it isn't an impediment.
Thanks, Richard.
That's my own view. Yeah.
So there's just a question about the program languages used in the course. So we did mention Python, but are there any other computer languages that are used in the program?
So, you know, I teach derivative securities as well as financial data science, and that's based in MATLAB. The econometrics course, I think, is also in MATLAB. Different lecturers use different software, but in all of the financial data science, and I think in the machine learning, there's an option there. You can use any language you like. The current module leader will let you use or, for example, or Python. But our programming course is in Python, and the financial data science course is in Python. And the reason for that is just there's so many packages available in Python that you can take on such a wide array of tasks or projects. And you know, there's packages available, and they're good, you know, so you can get started really quickly. Once you have basic Python knowledge, you can really start adding value and analyzing data and you know, working on quite complex projects quite quickly. So again, the focus in the course is not on becoming an expert in any given programming language. It's more about your skills in terms of analyzing financial data, looking for the story in the data, trying to find value in the data, trying to add value from a company perspective to decisions that they're making in investment or risk management, or again, in modeling things like ESG scores, or you know, whatever the particular business line of the company is. But it's a way of thinking and analyzing, dealing with data, and that isn't necessarily language dependent. Okay, so the language is just a tool. But it's skill or experience that you get from working with data and learning from that process and being able to add value based on that, and also being able to to create nice graphics and illustrations of your work and nice reports. Okay, which is also very important, especially in the business world.
Thanks, Richard. And we just have another question as well. It's in relation to what are the data science skills that you will learn in this course? And we do offer another MSc, the business analytics. Is there a big difference between those two programs?
Yeah, so I mean, I answered that because I'm not an expert on the business analytics program at all. So in terms of comparing programs, you know, you can look at the curriculum online, you can look at the two programs and compare them. So I mean, the difference from a top level between the two programs is that this MSc Financial Data Science is, the first half of the course is common with all the other MSc Finances in Smurfit. So it's giving you a really good grounding on capital markets and investing, risk management, financial theory, all of those, and quantitative methods that people use in banking and insurance. And then the specialization is in financial data science in the second semester and the third semesters as well.
Thanks, Richard. And I know we're coming towards the end of the webinar, so if there is any more questions, you can put them in the Q&A. I might just ask you another question, Richard. We get this a lot in admissions. So before a student starts the program, the end of August, is there anything they could do to prepare for the program? Any readings or any modules that they could take before they start the program?
Yes, so I mentioned that we use Python in the financial data science course, and there's just so many great resources online now for using Python and for financial data science. So a lot of people have blogs with examples of projects that you can very quickly get up and running. Once you have Python installed on your computer, you can immediately start copying and mirroring these blogs that people have and do some really interesting tasks. And that's without necessarily being an expert programmer in Python. So that's something I would say: set yourself a project or go through some of these projects and try and replicate them. Some of them are around trading. Everything is out there. Everything. And that's a great example to see if you enjoy. A lot of people have a mental block when it comes to programming, especially if they're not from a technical background. And the way to get around that is to do something. And then when you do it and you see that you can do it, and you get the sense of satisfaction from actually implementing something, getting results, and maybe it wasn't as complicated as you thought it was going to be initially. So, I would say just don't have some irrational fear about, you're not a programmer, you're not a technical person. And, anybody can get going on this if they put the time in. And that's how you get better, is by actually putting time in and trying things. It's not something you learn by reading a book.
Thanks, Richard. And we just have one final question. So it's just in regards to, if you've work experience, can you apply for the program? And so I might just answer this question. So yes, so a lot of our students come directly from their undergrad degrees. However, if you do have work experience and you'd like to apply, that's absolutely fine as well. So it doesn't matter if you have work experience or not. We look at the application as a full application. So if you do have work experience, we definitely recommend adding it to your application. We do take it into consideration when we're making our decision on the program as well. And Richard, do you have anything to add about maybe students that have worked within maybe the financial sector and then are coming back to do a master's?
No, I mean, I did that myself. I worked, and came back and did a master's after about 9 years in industry. And I think if you do that, you're normally highly motivated. It's a big decision to make, and you obviously really want to do it. And I think it's a good indicator of success if you had to, in advance try and predict who would do well, because students tend to be highly motivated and interested in the topic. So I don't see it as a barrier. If anything, it's a positive. It's a positive thing to do. To take a year out of your career. In my case, it was a 2 years full-time master's at the time in quant finance. They changed it to 1 year. But yeah, it can be a very interesting experience, and in my case, it's definitely beneficial. Anyway, I enjoyed it.
Thank you. So we're just coming towards the end of the webinar now. So if anybody does have any additional questions that they have about the program or applying to the program, you can contact us directly at the Smurfit. So the admissions email is smurfit.admissions@ucd.ie. And thank you all again so much for joining our webinar today.